This conference will now be recorded.
In today's session, we'll try to understand one more important service, security related service, that is IAM. So first we'll try to understand what is IAM, how it works, why we need to use IAM. So IAM is all about accessing the AWS resources, managing access to the AWS resources. So the full form of IAM is identity and access management. So in AWS, we are creating and managing the resources. We are creating and managing the resources like EC2, ELB, VPC, S3, right? Like various other services. So to manage access to those various resources in AWS, we can use IAM. So the full form of IAM is identity and access management. Identity and access management that help that help you to that helps you securely control access to AWS resources. So here AWS resources or services we call it, right? So this IAM help you to securely control access to the AWS resources. Who can do what within AWS, right? We can define using IAM. Here AWS resources or services are nothing but EC2, IAM, EC2, even IAM also an AWS service only. ELB, VPC, EKS, EFS, S3, Auto Scaling Group, VPC, RDS, DynamoDB. So these type of things is called as a AWS services. Not only this, there are many. I just named it few. So in AWS, we can create and manage these resources, but who can do what on these resources is based on IAM. With IAM, you can centrally manage the permissions. We can centrally manage the permissions that controls which AWS resources users can access. Who can access within AWS is can be defined in IAM. So IAM is all about identity and access management. It's all about authentication. It's all about authentication and authorization. It's all about authentication and authorization. So what is authentication? What is authorization? I hope you guys already know. So authentication and authorization. This IAM is all about authenticating and authorizing the users who can do what within AWS. That is based on IAM. So what is authentication, guys? We already discussed, maybe if you guys already aware, what is authentication and what is authorization. You take any tool, you have these concepts, authentication and authorization. So what is authentication? What is authorization? Anyone? Authentication is different, authorization is different. So authentication is different and authorization is different. Authentication is the process of verifying who the user is. Authentication is the process of verifying who is that user, whether that user is known to the system. So authentication is process of verifying who is accessing that system. Authentication is process of verifying the identity of the user. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity, who is that user. So authentication, it's a process of verifying or validating, you can say validating. Authentication is process of verifying or validating user or service. Who is that user identity or service identity. So authentication is the process of verifying, it's a process of verifying the identity of a user or any service or application like system. So there are various types of authentication. It is not like only mail password like this. There is various type of authentication. Basic authentication using username and password, that is username and password. And there is token based authentications also. You have already done a lot of times with the different tools already. So authentication is, it's a process of verifying the identity, whether that user is known to the system or not. That basic authentication, token based authentication, certificate based authentication, like that, various types of authentication mechanisms are there. To verify the identity of the system or a user. Now authorization, what is authorization? Authorization is different. What is authorization? So who is accessing, that is authentication, guys. Who is accessing, that is authentication. Okay, we are validating whether that user is known to the system, or that is authentication. So authorization is a process of verifying the access. It is not giving the access. We are not giving the access using authorization. We are verifying the access. Authorization is the process of verifying what access they have. Authorization, it's a process. It's a process of verifying what access they have on a specific resources. It's a process of verifying what access, what access, basically what permissions, what access they have is called authorization. What access, what permissions. So authorization is a process of verifying what access they have to, right? It's a process of verifying what access they have to the resources, So it's all about authentication and authorization. So when we create any AWS account, right? When we create any AWS account, we will be creating with some username and password, right? That we call it as a root username and password. So when we create an AWS account, you begin with one username and one email ID you are going to use. That email ID and that password, when you create an AWS account, you begin with one sign-in account to complete access to the AWS resources, right? So that root, that account is called as a root account, root user. So when you guys created AWS account, you provided one email ID, you provided the details. That is called as a root account. But in real time, does everyone will have their own AWS account with their own root username and password like that? In the actual projects, does every developer will have their own AWS account? Does every DevOps guy will have their own AWS account like that in the actual applications or projects in which you are working? No. So you have only one account. You have only one account for that application or for that project. But in real time, no one will use root account. No one will use root account, and it is not recommended to use root account unless until it is really required. So root account should not be used for any for creating or managing any resources. It is not recommended to use root account. Root account is only for managing the bills. For managing the bills, only some task you can perform via root account. Only to execute that task only you need to use the root account. So root account is only for closing your AWS account, or making the bills, right? Paying the amount, accessing the bills and cost management console, only for that one. Root account is not recommended to use for any other normal creation or updation or deletion of AWS services. So when any project or any company decided to go with cloud, they will create only one account, kind of a one AWS account. Some senior solution architect or some solution architect will create an account, and that root account will be only managed by someone. But again, that root account is not used for normal access, like creating a resources like servers, load balancers, networks. Root account is only for specific things which you can only do using root account, you need to use. But other developers and other DevOps guys or other infrastructure administrators, how they can get access, right? When the root account, when the account is created using that root account, right, they will grant admin permissions to some admins. Using root account, they will grant some admin access, they will grant some admin access to the administrators, so that administrators can again grant access to the normal users like developers, DevOps guys like that. In real time, it is not like everyone will have their own account. Only one account will be there at a project or account level, and you need access. Everyone like developers, DevOps guys need access to that AWS for creating and managing AWS resources. So the using root account, you will create to some admin accounts, admin users, and you will give a admin access to that admin users, so that admins can again manage access to the AWS account for other people. That is how in real time it works. Is everyone clear? First of all, it is not like every developer will have their own account in real time. Everyone will use same account, but they need access to that AWS account. So how do you manage access to that AWS account, and who can do what within AWS account? That is based on the IAM concept. Clear? Before I explain IAM concepts, in IAM you have some policies concepts, users concept, groups concept. Is everyone clear how it works in the real time? Now in IAM we have some concepts, policies, policies. We have users, we have groups, we have roles, and we have something called identity providers. In real time, it can be integrated. We can integrate AWS also with identity provider using some protocols like OpenID, using OpenID or SAML, protocols, we can integrate with identity providers, with the identity providers like LDAP. Basically, that LDAP is like Active Directory or G Suite, etc. So using identity providers, we can integrate with some identity provider like LDAP or Active Directory or G Suite. Like that, we can integrate so that AWS will contact that identity provider for authentication, authenticating the user. Sometimes you have a user's your employee details, right? Your company employee details like developers, DevOps guys, all those guys details will be part of some central identity providers like LDAP or Active Directory, like that. So AWS IAM also can be integrated with those identity providers. So AWS will contact that identity provider for authentication. Once authentication is done, it will validate what that user has a permission, what permissions that user has for AWS resource. That can be done via authorization using some permissions, some policies. So IAM has some concepts, policies, users, groups, roles, like that. So the moment any AWS account is created, the one which we used initially for creating, right? Everyone will start like this only, whether it is a company, whether it's a company, whether it's an individual, everyone will start creating an account, right? They will first sign in. They will first sign in. So sign in the sense they'll create. So they'll any company also, whether it's a individual or companies also, they'll create AWS account. Suppose they are giving something like this here. Just to give an example, can I consider this as a root account, the one which I am using here, and where I am valid giving some username and password like that? Can I consider this as a root account? Yes. So this root account, right, is not recommended for any day-to-day activities, whether it can be creating a VPCs, networks, load balancers, or anything also. That is not recommended for day-to-day operations. Root account will be initially used only for doing initial setup. So initial setup in the sense, using root account, right, you can assign some admins. You can create some users and you can assign an admin permissions again using IAM, with the root account. By logging into the root account in this IAM, we can integrate with identity providers initially also. Initially, we can integrate with identity providers like LDAP or Azure Active Directory, like that. Otherwise, you create one user, IAM user. For this user, you will attach some kind of a permissions. What permissions? Administrative permissions. For this type of users, you will attach some type of administrative permissions like system administrator, this administrator access, this type of permissions, policies you will attach. So if you see, it is like all the resources, all the permissions in AWS. This is how it is, the policy. This is admin policy, this is administrative policy. So you will assign some admin permissions to some people. So these people, this is how the policy is there. This is how the policy. Copy paste problem. Let me copy. This is how it is there. So for all the resources, all the permissions, like that, this is administrative access. So if I am attaching this policy to some group or some people, there becomes admins. So these guys again can grant and manage access to the other normal developers, DevOps guys, normal users also. That is how initially it will be done. So it is not like everyone will start having a root account or like that. So in IAM, we have some concepts, that is policies. Let's understand what is policy. Policies are nothing but a specific permissions. Policies are nothing but a specific permissions to the specific AWS resource. Policies are nothing but permissions. You can grant different permissions to the different resources, different permissions to the different resources using IAM policies. So policies is in the form of JSON. You are going to create a policies in the form of JSON. So you will create a policy, IAM policy. IAM policies define permissions for a specific AWS resource, specific AWS resource or group of AWS resource. So IAM policy is nothing but permissions. You are granting permissions. You are granting permissions to manage access to the AWS. We generate IAM policy. In the IAM policy, we are going to define permissions to the AWS resources. Permissions. Policies are nothing but specific permissions, actions basically. Permissions, basically actions. We can grant or we can define. We can define specific permissions or permissions. We can define permissions, actions on AWS resources. AWS resources like EC2, EBS, EFS, S3, ECR, VPC, etc. So we can define permissions, actions, specific permissions or permissions on AWS resource. So permissions is in the form of this policy is in the form of JSON. We can define specific permissions, permissions like actions, specific permissions, actions like create, update, delete, get, kind of a permissions on AWS resources. We can grant specific permissions on AWS resources like EC2, EBS, EFS, like this, using these policies, using IAM policies. So IAM policies are in the form of JSON. You are going to define in the form of JSON. IAM policies are defined in the form of JSON, JavaScript object notation. Okay. So again, there are two types of IAM policies already. There are two types of IAM policies. There are two types of IAM policies. One is AWS managed policies. AWS managed IAM policies. Second one is customer managed. Customer managed in the sense what we create. Customer managed policies. That is what we create in that account, these IAM policies. Whatever IAM policies we created as a user of AWS, what policies you are creating, that we call it as a customer managed policy. There is something called IAM managed, AWS managed policy. So AWS managed policies are basically pre-created by AWS only. Pre-created by AWS only. So for lot of use cases, already AWS has defined lot of policies. So AWS only pre-created lot of policies in that account, in our account. So AWS managed policy are basically created and managed already by AWS. So AWS managed policy. So AWS managed policy that is created and administrated by AWS. So already so a lot of policies are created for us in advance. If you go to IAM, IAM is a global service, guys. IAM is a global service, which means the access to the AWS resources you are defining globally using IAM. So IAM is a global service. If you go to IAM, there are policy section. There is policy section. You can see there are type, right? AWS managed. There are a lot of AWS managed policy. If you see, there is something called EC2 full access, Amazon EC2 full access. Let me expand this one. This is one AWS managed policy in IAM. So if you expand this one, it is saying like this is in the form of JSON. This is in the form of JSON. Any IAM policy you take, it is in the form of JSON only. If you see this policy, most importantly, you have something like this statements, action, effect, resource. So action EC2 colon star, there is something called EC2 colon star, resource for all the EC2 resources, for all the AWS EC2 resources, EC2 colon star. This EC2 colon star means EC2 create instance, EC2 delete instance, EC2 stop instance, EC2 start instance, like that, anything. So which means, is it like all the permissions on EC2 for all the EC2 resources, like that? Here, yes. So already predefined policy is there. Amazon EC2 full access. Similarly, you have something like Amazon EC2 read only access. Similarly, you have something like Amazon EC2 read only. Let me type EC2 read only access. If you see this read only, it is like only EC2 describe, load balancing describe, CloudWatch describe, like that. So this is one policy in the form of JSON. So where there are, we can define specific actions on specific resources, right? So this is one policies already pre-created and by AWS only, AWS managed policy. Now let's consider I am attaching this policy to some users. I am attaching this policy to the users. That users are not end users, okay? That users are not end users. That users are AWS users like developers, DevOps guys, admins. Suppose I am attaching this policy to one user like Balaji. Does Balaji can create EC2 instance? Does Balaji can terminate EC2 instance? Does Balaji can stop EC2 instance because of this policy attached to Balaji? Suppose I am attaching this policy to Balaji. Does Balaji can create EC2, update EC2, delete EC2? This policy, if I attach, okay, am I audible? First of all, am I, or I'm teaching myself? I'm explaining AWS for myself. Huh? You see here, I told EC2 colon star, which means EC2 create instance, update instance, delete instance, stop instance. That is what the meaning of that star. I am asking one question. If I attach this policy to some user like Balaji, does Balaji can create EC2, update EC2, delete EC2? That is what my question. People are saying at least no, yes. Or am I teaching myself this AWS? Understand the concept, be active. So since we are granting full permissions on EC2 using this policy, suppose if I am attaching this policy to some user, that user can do everything on EC2. But does that user can do something on RDS or IAM or maybe EKS, ECR, S3? If I am attaching only this policy to Balaji, does Balaji can create or at least see EKS clusters or see S3 buckets, or will be able to see list at least? No, because only if you are attaching only this policy, only these permissions. So policies are nothing but specific permissions. We can define specific permissions like create, update, delete on AWS resources using IAM policy. IAM policies are in the form of JSON. There are two types of policies: customer managed policy, AWS managed policy. So it is in the form of JSON. Suppose similarly, you have S3 read only, S3 read only, S3 full access, like that. If you see the permissions, S3 colon get, S3 colon list, like that. Since there is no S3 colon update, S3 colon create, like that, whoever has this policy, whether it's a user, whether it's a group of users, will they able to delete S3 buckets or object? Will they able to create S3 buckets or object? Who has this policy attached? Will they able to create objects or buckets in the AWS, or will they able to delete objects or bucket? If someone has this all policy, can they create? No, because it is like a read only, right? Get a list, like that. So there are some predefined policies like this. If required, you can create your own policy, that is customer managed policy. I have given some policy like this. I have given some policy like this. I have given some policy like this. Suppose here, if you see, this is my own policy. This is my own policy, customer manager policy. So here I am defining some permissions on EKS read only permissions, only to some AWS EKS resource again. So I am, even though there are n number of EKS clusters, I am saying only for this resource I am granting these actions. Only for this resource I am granting these actions. So whoever attached this policy, they will have all these permissions, but for not all the EKS resources, only this resource. There is something called ARN in AWS. I already told there is something called ARN in AWS, right? So since I am using that ARN here, that resource ARN, these permissions is only for this resource. But even though there are a lot of other EKS clusters, whoever attached this policy, will they get these permissions on other resources other than this one? No, because you are using some ARN here, only for this resource, these permissions you are granting. So if required, you can create your own policy, that is customer managed policy. Is everyone clear? First, what do you mean by policy? What is AWS managed policy? What do you mean by customer managed policy here? Now, users, IAM users are nothing but IAM users, right? So here we can integrate with identity providers like LDAP or Azure AD, like that. But if required, you can create a users in AWS itself, like Balaji, Bhaskar, kind of a users. But most of the times in real time, we will integrate with LDAP, because you already have some central identity provider like LDAP or Active Directory, where your employee details like developers details, DevOps guy details, testers details, everything will be managed centrally in the LDAP. We can integrate with LDAP for authentication. Otherwise, you can still create a users in AWS also, that is IAM users. For users, you can attach policies directly. To users, you can attach policies directly, or you can add users to the group, and you can attach policies to the group. So group is nothing but group of users. We can create a group. We can create a group. We can create a group and add one or more users. We can add one or more users, any number of users, to the group, and we can attach policies to the group. We can attach policies to the group. Suppose you have lot of users. If you have a lot of users, is it simple attaching a permissions, or basically managing the permissions at a user level? You can create a users and you can attach policies to the users also directly. But if you have a thousands of users or lakhs of users like that, is it easy for us to manage permissions or attach permissions at the user level? It will be very difficult, right? So instead of attaching and managing the permissions at a user level, there is something called group. There is something called group. There is something called group. So group, we can create a group and we can add one or more users to the group and we can attach policies to the group. Group is like development group, dev team, development group, DevOps team, DevOps group, admin group, admin group, testing team or QA group, QA team, like this. So development team, DevOps team, admin team, QA team, like that. Now let's say I have 100 developers like Balaji, Bhaskar, Raja, like this. I have some people like all are developers, but instead of attaching a policies at individual user level, can I add all these guys to one group like development group, and can I attach permissions to this group, policies to this group, like whatever policies I want to attach? Yes. So if I'm attaching policies to one group, if there are these guys in that group, does all the people will have access to the same, I mean to say, does all the people will have same set of access, same level of access, whoever is part of that group? Yes. Suppose tomorrow someone joined, suppose tomorrow someone joined, new employee joined for developing the application. If I add that guy to this development group where I have already attached policies, so is that guy also get access to the AWS resources based on the policies attached to that group? Yes. Suppose someone is leaving the company. Suppose someone is leaving the company. If I remove that guy from that group, or suppose someone is leaving the project, even though he is not going out of the company, he is going out of the project and he is joining new project within the same company also. If I remove that guy from that group, does that guy will lose the access to the resources based on the policies attached? Yes. So instead of managing a permissions at a user level, you can attach the permissions at a group level. You can attach the permissions at a group level. And we have something called roles. We have something called roles. We can create a role. This role is for a different purpose. Suppose some AWS resource itself requires access to the AWS resource. Some AWS service, some service or application, some service or application which you are going to run in AWS itself requires access to the AWS resources. What I can do? I can create a role and I can attach policies to that role and I can attach that role to the AWS service. Suppose EC2 is one service, EKS is one service, Lambda is one service. Using EC2, I am trying to manage, or using EC2, I am trying to manage some AWS resources. Or using EKS, I am managing some AWS resources. Or from Lambda, I am accessing some AWS resources. So that is not a user, right? EC2 is not a user. EKS is not a user. Lambda function is not a user. That is already a AWS service. So that AWS service requires access to the AWS services to manage something on behalf of us. So we can't use user concept there. So what I can do? I can create a role. I can create a role and I can attach the role to that service and I can attach policies to that role. So based on the policies attached to that role and based on the role, whatever role is attached to that AWS service, is that AWS service will get access to the AWS services only based on the policies attached to that role and based on the role we are using with that AWS service like EC2 or EKS. Yes. So if you guys remember just yesterday session, did I created one role before create a EKS cluster? Did I created one IAM role where I had attached some policies, EKS cluster policies, and again did I attach that IAM role to the EKS service while creating a EKS cluster? Did I attach that role to the EKS cluster only? So because of that, EKS cluster is able to manage load balancers, EC2 instances, and all those things. And also yesterday we created a node group. While creating a node group, also, did we created one role where did I attach the ECR read, ECR read only access, CNI policy, EKS worker node policy, AWS EBS CSI driver policy, like that for that EC2 node group, that Kubernetes worker node. So is that worker nodes also will have access to the AWS resources based on the policies attached to that role, based on the role we attach to that nodes? Yes. So roles is a way to provide access to the AWS resources for managing the AWS resources. Suppose you are using EC2. From EC2 you want to upload files to S3. From EC2 you want to download files to S3. Will it able to upload, download files to S3 without permissions? Is that EC2 instance will be able to access S3 for uploading files, downloading files like that without attaching a permissions? No. So in that case, can I create one IAM role, attach that S3 policies to that IAM role? Can I attach that IAM role to that EC2 instance? Yes. Suppose you are running a Terraform script from EC2. Suppose you are running a Terraform script from EC2. So using Terraform, you are trying to create a VPC, you are trying to create a subnets, you are trying to create a IGW, you are trying to create load balancers. Even though there is a Terraform script, you are running the Terraform script in the EC2, or maybe in the Lambda function, or maybe in the code build or code deploy AWS service. Do you think is that service will be able to create your infrastructure as per the Terraform script if there is no permissions for that service, AWS permissions? No. So in that case, suppose if I am running a Terraform script on Jenkins instance, that Jenkins instance is already a AWS server. Suppose I am running a Terraform script via pipeline. Jenkins pipeline. That Jenkins is basically my EC2. In my EC2 instance, I am running the Jenkins. So if I run the Terraform script, but that EC2 instance in which Jenkins is installed, in which Jenkins is running the Terraform script, if that doesn't have access to the AWS resources, does Terraform internally will make API calls only? Does Terraform will be able to create the infrastructure as per the script? No. In that case, can we create one IAM role? Can we attach like a kind of admin policy, admin access to that IAM role? And can I attach that IAM role to the Jenkins instance so that the Terraform script that is getting executed in Jenkins instance, will it able to create your infrastructure since you attach the role with the required policies? Yes. So is everyone clear? Role is a way to grant access to the AWS resources for the AWS resources. Clear? IAM policies, IAM users, IAM groups, IAM roles. Now let me create some users, let me create some groups, and let me demonstrate this. Let me create some users, let me create some groups, let me demonstrate. So if required, you can create a groups. As of now, I don't have any groups. Let me create a group, let me create a users like this. So instead of, you can directly manage permissions at the user level only, but instead of that, you can attach this user to group. For the group, you can attach the policies. As of now, I don't have any users, I don't have any groups. So let me create a user like this. I'm creating one IAM user. But this is also done as an admin only, not root. Okay, this is also done as an admin only, not root. But that admin should have IAM policies. That admin should have been attached with IAM policy. Suppose someone needs to create a policy, update role, create role, update user, create user, update group, delete group, create group. So if someone has to do this IAM level access, right? is that guy should have IAM access first of all. The guy who want to create a policy, the guy who want to attach the policy, modify the policies, or creating a users groups, that guy should first have a access to the IAM only. Since I am using root, that guy already has everything access. Okay. So let me create one user like Balaji. And here you have option. Here you have option. Enable console access. Enable console access. What do you mean by console access? Recently AWS CLI has been changed. What do you mean by console access here? What do you mean by console? Terminal. It is nothing to do with terminal. Console is nothing but the GUI, the AWS console, that is GUI. Whether this guy should have access to the GUI via GUI, whether this guy should be able to log in. So GUI console is nothing but a GUI, graphical user interface. So whatever we are accessing like this. Suppose if I want to grant this console access to this Balaji, I have to select. So here initial password. I am setting some initial password. Later that guy can change the password. I am setting some password, something like this. This is like initial password. User must create a new password at next sign in. User must create a new password on the next sign in. So that is, I am selecting like this. So this Balaji is logging into the AWS when using his credentials with this name and this password. He has to update his first password. And again, to update the password also, Balaji requires some permissions. To update the password also, Balaji requires some permissions. So this policy is automatically attached to Balaji. IAM user change password policy is all going to be attached to Balaji automatically, so that he can update his password. We are creating a user with programmatic access. I am setting some default password. User must change the password for the first time. And for programmatic access, suppose this Balaji has to access AWS resources programmatically. Balaji has to manage access to the AWS resources. Balaji need access to the AWS resources programmatically. So programmatic access. So programmatic access in the sense, you have a CLI, you have a API, you have a SDK, and other developmental platforms, other developmental platforms other developmental platforms like what? Terraform or Pulumi, kind of infrastructure as a tools. So Balaji need access to the AWS resources programmatically. So programmatic access. So can we use username and password in the programmatic access to access, or for authentication and for authentication programmatically, like that can be a CLI, or that can be a API, or that can be a SDK, or that can be a Terraform. Does Balaji can authenticate with AWS using username and password programmatic access? No. Only console access, username and password. Only GUI, username and password, console. But programmatic access, what we need for Balaji as a user of AWS, as a developer or as a DevOps guy, he need to manage access to the AWS resources. He need access to the AWS resources. So programmatic access, what he can use to access the AWS resources programmatically? Console, username and password. But programmatic, what he need? What config? What config? That is not config. Programmatic access using access keys and secret key. There is something called access keys and secret keys. So he need an access key. He need a secret key, right? Now recently AWS has changed some concept here. So for programmatic access, Balaji can only generate the access keys and secret keys. For programmatic access, you can generate access keys after you create the user. After creating the user only, access keys and secret keys can be generated. But for generating access keys for his own username and for his own user also, Balaji also, for Balaji, he has to generate an access key and secret key. Again, you need some IAM policies. List, create access key, update access key, delete access key. Those permissions, IAM, IAM list access key, IAM update access key, IAM create access key. Those permissions also required for Balaji. Then only he can generate the access keys and secret keys. So programmatic access using access keys and secret keys. Clear? As a user, programmatically he has to manage AWS resources. Then he has to use access keys and secret keys. That can be a CLI, that can be API, that can be a Terraform running as a Balaji in his local system. He need access keys and secret keys. He has to generate his access keys and secret keys, and he has to use. For generating access keys for himself also, we need to attach some IAM access key permissions. That I will do after creating a user. Clear what I am doing here? Now let me create a user. Let me create a user. As I already told, while creating a user itself, you can add that user to some group. I don't have any group. I can attach policies directly to that user. I can attach policies directly to that user, IAM policies. Whatever policies I want to attach, I can attach directly. Or I can add that user to the group. But as of now, I don't have a group. I'll create a group later. I'll create a group later. Let me create a user without any attaching policies. Let me create a user. Let me create a user. Now this is how he can log in with the IAM username. He has to log in using this URL. This is the AWS account ID only. This is the AWS account ID only. So let me go back. Let me create a similar type of user like Bhaskar. Let me select this. Let me auto, like kind of a default password. Kind of a default password. This guy also I am not attaching anything. Like this, I created a user. Like this, I created a user. Now let me create a group. I can attach policies to this user directly. I can attach policies to this user directly, but that is problem, right? You can't add. You can't add a lot of. I mean to say, if you have a lot of users, it's a problem for that user. I mean to say, managing policies at a user level is a problem. Managing policies at a user level is a problem. So let me create a group. Let me create someone called admin group. Let's say I am saying admin, group name is admin. I am adding Balaji. I'm creating a group directly. I'm creating a group directly. I'm creating a group called admin. And here I'm attaching administrative policies. When I'm creating a group, I'm attaching this administrative policies, administrative access. If you see, this is I'm attaching. It is like this resource star, action star. Action is a star, not EC2 star. It is not S3 star. It is not ELB star. It is just a star, which means is it for all the resources, all the permissions in AWS? Yes. So I am attaching this policy to the admin group. I am attaching this policy to the admin group. I created one group now. I created one group now. That group has this policy. That group has this policy. Administrative access. Administrator access. For this group, I can add the users. Let me add a user like Balaji. I'm adding only Balaji. Is Balaji is an admin now? Is Balaji is an admin now? Because Balaji is added to this group. this group has attached with this policy. Now similarly, there is some user like Bhaskar. For Bhaskar, let me create a one more group. Otherwise, now as a root, I no need to create a group. If Balaji also can log in, if Balaji logins to his account, I know Balaji log into the AWS basically. If Balaji log into the AWS, since he has admin access, does Balaji can manage the users, groups, policies again? Instead of root managing the users, instead of root managing the policies, instead of root managing the groups access, does Balaji can do the creating a users, groups, policies like that also, because Balaji is an admin now? Are you guys able to understand what I'm saying? Now Balaji is an admin. Does Balaji can also do everything like IAM, creating a users, groups, because administrative access has been provided, right? Now let me do this also as a root only if required. So I am going to create a one more group. I am going to create a one more group. Let me create a group name as development. Let me create a group with some specific policies. I am just giving easy to read only. Easy to read only. Let me type here, select this. Let me type S3 read only. S3 read only. Let me select this one, leave it. Let me say VPC read only. While creating a development group, I am giving like a read only, VPC read only. Search this, select this, clear the filter. Like this, I am giving read only, read only. Similarly, RDS read only, RDS read only. Select this, clear the filter. Like this, I am giving some policies. For now, I am creating a development group. I created a development group, and for the development group, I attached 4 policies. Later also I can add. Later also I can add. Later also I can come to this group. I can add or delete permissions also anytime. For this group, I can come to this group, go to permissions tab. So if required, you can remove permissions like this. Select these 2 and remove also at any time, or later also you can add. Suppose if I want to remove these 2, or let's say I don't want to give S3 read only, this DynamoDB RDS read only, I can remove like this anytime. If required, I can add anytime. Attach policies like this. RDS read only I'm giving like this. Attach policy like this. I'm attaching a policy. Now I am going to add this Bhaskar to this group. Bhaskar I am selecting and I am adding Bhaskar to this development group. But if these guys has to generate access keys and secret keys, you need some policy, guys. If Bhaskar has to generate, especially if Bhaskar has to generate access keys and secret keys, because he is not an admin and he don't have a that access key related permissions. Balaj, this Bhaskar belongs to the development group. In the development group, we have not attached access key related policies where he can create his own access key and secret key. But Balaji can do, because Balaji has attached with admin. Admin has like IAM also, access keys, secret keys also, like that. So for that one, let me create my own policy. Let me create one own policy. AWS has changed something recently. Suppose someone has to generate access keys for secret keys or for his own username. So again, permissions required. To create access keys for your own IAM user also, you must have the following permissions. To create access keys, to rotate access keys, you must have the following permissions for his for your own IAM user also. So I am creating one policy like this. I am creating one policy like this. This policy to create access keys for your own IAM, I mean to say, as a Balaji, I want to create. As a Balaji, I want to create access keys and secret keys. As a Bhaskar, I want to create access keys and secret keys for my own username. So you need to have these policies. So if you don't have these policies, again, Balaji log into his account, or maybe Bhaskar log into his account, thus Bhaskar will be able to generate access keys and secret keys which he want to use programmatically for CLI or API or Terraforms in his laptop? No. So we need to create this policy where we are giving IAM create access, IAM delete access, IAM get user list access keys, update access keys, but only for his own username. It is only for his own username. He cannot create access keys and secret keys for other IAM users, only for his own username. We need to create one policy like this. We need to create one policy like this. Let me go to policies. This is like a customer managed policy. Click on create policy. Go to JSON directly. Let me paste this policy. Let me paste this policy. Let me click on tag. I can give one role name. Role name I am giving. Role name I am giving. Role name I am giving something like this. Manage own access keys policy. Something like this. Some name. I am creating a I am creating a policy. This is my policy name. I am creating a policy. This is my policy name. I am not creating a role. This is customer managed policy. By default, every user will not get access keys now. That's what I told. By default, they will not get permissions, first of all, to generate access keys and secret key. So that should have this policy attached. Then only that guy can generate access keys and secret keys for his own username also. So otherwise, you will see permission denied on that access keys page. If that guy goes to access keys page to generate access keys and secret keys, if that guy don't have these access key policies, he cannot create access keys and secret keys for his own account also. So that is how it is there now. So I created one policy. Let me attach that policy to that group. Let me attach that policies to that group. Admin will not share. Understand, Vijay Lakshmi. Don't deviate here. Admin is giving a permissions to generate his access keys. Why admin will share every time? Admin is giving a permissions to generate access keys and secret keys for his own username. Admin will not create access key and secret key for him. He is attaching a permissions to generate his own access keys so that he can generate by going to his account. If you are having difficulty in understanding, try to refer this video one more time. So I am attaching a policy to this group that whatever policy that manage access keys for self, right? Manage access keys for self or manage own access keys. This one I created just now, where there is a permissions to create access key, there is a permissions to delete access key. So I'm attaching this policy also. I'm attaching this policy also. So the Balaji, the Bhaskar here, Bhaskar is part of this group. For that group, I attached this policy. So does Bhaskar can generate his own access keys and secret keys once he log in, once he go to access that security page? Yes. Admin will not create and share. If I have 1,000 users, if I have 10,000 users, is it possible for admin to create access keys and grant access keys for each and every guy who is working in that company? No. So admin is attaching a permissions to that guys so that they can generate their own access keys and secret key. Now for this guy, for this guy, for this guy, Balaji, that is not required because Balaji has this admin access. Is it covering everything here? because here it is not given EC2 colon star or IAM colon star like that, it is not given here. So it is administrative policy. So Balaji has that policy already. He can generate his own access keys and he has access to all the AWS resources also because administrative access. But when it comes to Bhaskar, Bhaskar belongs to this group. Bhaskar belongs to this group, development group. But development group has a specific permissions only. Development group has only few policies attached. Few policies attached. So permissions for development group, EC2 read only, something like this. EC2 describe, elastic load balancing describe, CloudWatch describe, auto scaling describe, EC2 read only. And here VPC read only, like that. Here policies. So now let me open a private tab. Let me open a private tab, incognito tab. Now I am a Bhaskar, let's consider. I will open AWS console. I joined that company. I open AWS console. Let me open a private tab, incognito tab in one more tab. I am not a root user. I don't have a root username and password. I am a IAM user. When you guys selected IAM user, you need to give the account ID. You need to give the account ID. Or if you open this URL directly, this account ID will be pre-populated. It will go to next page directly. If you open this URL, in the URL itself, there is account ID. In the URL itself, there is account ID. If you open like this account ID will be pre-populated and it will go to the next page where I can directly provide a username and password. If you access like this, just console.aws.com like that, you don't have a root. I am not a root user. I need to provide the account ID also. If I directly open in a private tab, I am opening because I already logged in as a root. In real time, you don't have a root credentials. I select IAM. You need to provide account ID. So if you already have a account ID URL like this, you can use this one. Otherwise, your admin will give the account ID. In the instructions, they will give this is account ID like this. So let me open this URL directly. Otherwise, you know this account ID, give this account ID and click on next. It will give the another page. You will enter username and password. So let me open directly with that account ID. Now I am Bhaskar. I am trying to log in as a Bhaskar. Test@123 4. This is my initial password. I am Bhaskar now. I am logging into AWS. Now for the first time I am logging. I am changing my default password. Now there is something wrong. Now I have EC2 read only, I have a VPC read only like that. But if I go to any other service where I don't have a permissions at all, let me go to EKS. Let me search here EKS and let me go to EKS. Will I get a kind of a permissions denied because Bhaskar doesn't have EKS read only policy also. If you go to EKS page, list clusters, easy getting error. This guy don't have a permissions, you don't have a permissions to see the how many clusters are also there like that. Yes. And if you go to EC2, he has a read only access. He has a read only access. So he can see how many servers are there like that. But since he has a read-only access, when he click on stop instance or terminate instance like that, even though he's clicking on terminate instance, is that AWS will allow this guy to terminate that instance or stop instance? If you see Bhaskar is able to terminate or stop? No, because Bhaskar belongs to development group. Development group has only EC2 read-only access. So he can't stop, he can't terminate like that. And also, let's consider, let me Bhaskar is trying to launch EC2 instance. Bhaskar is trying to launch EC2 instance. Bhaskar is trying to launch EC2 instance. Let's say test-server like this. Let's select instance type, key pair, everything he is selecting, feeling happy that he can select everything. But let me finally click on launch. Is this AWS is allowing Bhaskar to create a EC2 instance? No, because Bhaskar has a read-only permissions. Bhaskar has a read-only permissions. Now Bhaskar has a S3 access, but S3 read-only. S3 read-only. Let's go to S3. Let's go to S3. Let's go to S3. He has some buckets here. We have some buckets here already, but he can he upload files to S3 because Bhaskar has only S3 read-only access only. Let him upload some file like this. Is that AWS will allow, whether it's a GUI, whether it's a CLI, whether this guy will allow? You can see here itself. It is failed. For what reason it is failed? For what reason it is failed? Access denied. Access denied. You don't have permissions to upload files. Will he able to delete files? This guy? Suppose some file is there here. Will this guy will be able to delete that file from S3? Even though he is saying I want to delete, let permanently delete, he is typing. Let's click on delete objects. Is that guy able to delete? No, because Bhaskar don't have a permissions. But if he go to any other services where he don't have access at all, if this guy goes to maybe DynamoDB, will he able to see DynamoDB tables also? First of all, he don't have access to DynamoDB at all. If you go to DynamoDB, if we click on tables here itself, no. If we go to IAM also, only he can see the access key section. Only he can see that access key section. Only he can see that access key section. But will he able to create policies, update policies? Will he able to create users, create groups, roles, policies like this? No, he can't do that. All these things. But if we go to this, Bhaskar can select the security credentials. In the top right corner, there is something called security credentials. If you go to security credentials, since we attached that IAM create access key, IAM delete access keys like that, only this section is showing. This button is showing because we attached that policy, right? IAM create access key, IAM delete access key, update access key. Did we created one policy, we attached that policy. So he can generate his own access keys. While he is generating his own access keys, for what he want to generate also, whether it's for a CLI, whether it is for any other third party which is not listed like this also, he can select and he can click on next. He can click on next. He can select CLI or he can select anything like other also. So if it is not listed, the use case which you want to use for this access keys and secret keys which is not listed here, you can select this other and click on next like this. You can give some description or let me generate directly. So this is my access key, Bhaskar access key, Bhaskar access key, Bhaskar secret key. He can download also. Is admin is sharing the access keys and secret keys to Balaji? Sorry, Bhaskar here? No. Admin has attached the policies to generate access keys and secret keys so that Bhaskar can generate his own access keys and secret keys. Clear? Now I will use this access keys and secret keys for programmatic access. Vijay Lakshmi, you need to grown up. What list of access they have? What list of access they have? That admin Bhaskar, Bhaskar will not know, right? What permissions you have. Admin is giving the permissions. If you are trying to access something, you will just get access denied only. Will they say you have only this permissions, this permissions? Based on the group you belongs to, you will get access. Based on the group you belongs to, you get the access. That's it. Based on the policies admin attached to you, will get the access. If you don't have a access for something, whom you should contact? If you don't have something, you are accessing something, you don't have access. If you really need access, whom you will contact to get the access? Are you going to grant access for yourself? No, right? You have to contact admin. Admin, I need access to so and so service. Can you please assign the access? But in real time, you will need to contact admin. You can't grant access to yourself. In real time, admin also ask a ticket approval, right? Your manager has to approve your request. Yes, she really need access. Please grant him. Then admin will attach the required policies. Guys, you are a graduate, so think logically and don't expect like a spoon feeding. That is highly impossible here, especially in the Terraform session. Think logically, right? You need some permissions, right? You can't get permissions to yourself, right? You are going, some higher authority has to give the permissions. That who is that higher authority? That higher authority is an admin who has access to the IAM, who can attach the policies for you or your group. Now let me keep his access keys and secret keys, because I am going to demonstrate CLI also. But let me log out as a Bhaskar. I am playing a dual role today. Let me log out as a Bhaskar and let me log in as a Balaji. Let me log in as a Balaji. So account ID, let me use this account ID. Balaji. Balaji is added to the admin group where administrative access. Initial password. Initial password Balaji. Okay. Initial password for Balaji, I forgot. Okay. Maybe let's try this way. Oh, there is a dot. Sorry. There is a dot in the account ID. So let's Balaji login. Balaji also logged in for the first time. He has to update his password. Since Balaji belongs to admin group where administrative policy is attached, does Balaji can do anything, everything here except that billing? Except that billing. He can't go to billing section here. So he can't go to billing section and manage the billing or payments like that. He can't go to this billing and manage the payments like this, because this can be done only by root. This can be done only by root. But except this billing and few other things, does Balaji can do anything? Because administrative access, EC2, create server, stop server, terminate server, RDS, DynamoDB, IAM also. If you go to IAM also, this Balaji, because IAM policy is also there in the administrative access. Does Balaji can attach required policies to the Bhaskar also now? Now, let's say users, he can see Bhaskar, right? And his group, his group. Now, if required, can he attach permissions to the development group? Some permissions for this Bhaskar. He belongs to this group, development group. For the development group, he can attach some policies, or he can create a users. He can create a users, something like this. Okay. Now he can generate access keys and secret keys for his own. Balaji can generate his own access keys and secret keys. Here, create access key. Let me select other use case for now. Let me click on next. So let me generate access keys and secret keys. These are access keys and secret keys of Balaji. Let me download Balaji access keys also. I will use with CLI. Since Balaji belongs to admin group where admin access has been provided, will be able to access any other AWS service, create, update, delete, everything he can do, right? Nowhere he is getting access denied except that billing here. Clear? What do you mean by admin here? How Balaji is in admin? Because Balaji belongs to one group where administrative access has been added. Suppose Balaji want to upload some file to S3 or create some buckets or delete some buckets. Does Balaji can do now in this account? If you see, he has to delete this bucket, whole bucket. Let's say first he need to empty the files in that bucket, and he can do that because he is an admin. And he can delete the bucket also because he is an admin, right? But does the same thing can be done by Bhaskar when he log in to this AWS account? You granted only few permissions. Clear? What is IAM? What is user? What is group? What is policies? What is what here in the IAM? Now, if everyone is clear, let me demonstrate AWS CLI. Let me demonstrate AWS CLI. So, as a Balaji or Bhaskar, will I able to install AWS CLI in my own local laptop or local desktop also to programmatically manage something in AWS? Yes. So, AWS CLI. I can install AWS CLI in Windows. I can install AWS CLI in Mac. I can install AWS CLI in Linux also. I am using a MacBook. I can install AWS CLI by downloading this pkg file. Double click on that pkg. It will install. Suppose you guys are using Windows, laptops or desktops or servers. You can download this MSI file. I'm giving that MSI file link here. You just go to Google also, install AWS CLI. It will show the official documentation only. Click on this link. Here there are sections. Windows, how to install. Download this MSI file. Click on next like that. So MSI file, Microsoft executable file. So once you download this file, something like this, it will be downloaded. If you click on next, it will install. I don't think I need to show this installation also. So you download MSI file into your local laptop, click on next. AWS CLI will be installed. Suppose you guys are using Mac, you download this package file and it will work. Suppose you guys are using some Linux desktops or Linux systems, you download the zip file of that AWS CLI, you extract that AWS CLI, you execute this command like this also, it will install. But I already installed AWS CLI. I already installed AWS CLI. You can see in my local laptop, this is my local command prompt only. If you guys are using Windows laptops or desktop, do you have your own CMD, that is command prompt? If you go to start button here, you see some CMD option like command prompt or PowerShell. You can use PowerShell also, or you can use command prompt also. This is my command prompt, my local laptop. I already have a AWS CLI. But here, if I execute some AWS commands like AWS S3LS, AWS S3LS or AWS S3MB make bucket, I want to create a bucket like this. If I am executing these type of commands, do you think it will work if you just install AWS CLI? No, because the CLI needs to authenticate and authorize. So this is where I need to use access keys and secret keys. This is where I can use access keys and secret keys. So I can execute some command like this AWS configure, or you can export as an environment variable also, guys. You can export as an environment variable also. So instead of configuring, right, instead of configuring the by executing AWS configure command, instead of configuring like this also, by executing AWS configure, by instead of providing this access key, secret key like this also, you can set it as an environment variable also. You can set it as an environment variable also. There are various options here. You can pass as an environment variables. You can pass as an environment variables. So you can set it as an environment variables also. Something like this: export access key, export secret key. You can do something like this. If you guys are using command prompt Windows, if you guys are using Windows laptop or desktop, you can execute something like this in your Windows laptop or desktop. This is as an environment variable. If you guys are using Windows command prompt, you can execute something like this. You can execute something like this. You can execute something like this. If you guys are using PowerShell, something like this. If you guys are using Linux or Mac, you can execute something like this. This way also I can configure my access keys and secret keys. Export access key ID, your access key. Export secret key ID, that secret key, and default region. You can do like this in case of Windows. You can do like this. As an environment variable also you can set. In case of Linux systems or MacBook, you can set environment variable like this. This is temporary. This is temporary, but you need to replace your access keys and secret key. You need to replace your access key and secret key. Let me use Bhaskar access key. I downloaded Bhaskar access key sometime back, right? When I generated. So this is Bhaskar access key. If you guys are using Windows laptop or desktop, you can set something like this. This is the Bhaskar access key. In the Bhaskar laptop or desktop, Bhaskar can set like this. And this is the Bhaskar secret key. If he is using Windows laptop or desktop, he can set something like this. The default region, AP South, one like that, Mumbai. Suppose same thing, Bhaskar is using MacBook, he can set something like this. This is as an environment variable. As an environment variable. After setting like this, does Bhaskar can execute AWS S3, LS or S3, whatever it is, again based on the permissions, it will work. Suppose Bhaskar has a S3 read only. Does Bhaskar can see how many S3 buckets are there? Yes. But does Bhaskar will be able to create a bucket by executing a CLI like this? Even though he configured, will he able, is this command will work? No. So he can do temporarily like this also as an environment variable. Otherwise, one more option, can you execute AWS configure command, and it will ask username and password, like I mean to say access key and secret key. It's up to you whether you do like this, it's up to you. Now let me show that I can set something like this also. Instead of AWS configure also, I can say export like this. I'm using MacBook. So I'm using something like this. I'm setting the default region also, AP South 1. Now I'm using Bhaskar access key. Is this AWS S3 LS command is listing how many buckets are there, because Bhaskar has a S3 read only access, and some files I want to see inside this bucket. Now AWS S3 LS, it is giving something like this. But if Bhaskar is trying to create a bucket, AWS S3 S3 is creating some bucket like this, will it work? What does it mean? What does it mean, guys? Permission denied. Now let me close this terminal, and again if I open that command prompt, since I have to set it temporarily that environment variables, again same command prompt I have closed and I have opened, but since I have set temporarily like this, again it may ask something like this again, configure like that. Again, if required, I can set as an environment variable like this again. If I close and open the terminal, it will not work. But if required, can I set something like this also permanently? AWS, configure command I can use instead of environment option. Configure. Now it will ask access key. So let me give that Bhaskar access key only. Let me give Bhaskar access key only. Let me give Bhaskar secret key only. Default region AP South 1 Mumbai. Preferred output format, you can say table format, JSON format like that. Now I used Bhaskar access keys only, but again if I try to create some bucket, it will not work. But he has a read only, he can see buckets, and if required he can download files also from this S3 to local laptop. If already some files are there in this buckets, right, he can access. If you see there is one jar file, there is one jar file in this bucket. If required, he can copy AWS S3 CP. Source is my S3 bucket. Source is my S3 bucket. The bucket source is my S3 bucket. Source is my S3 bucket. And destination, this file, this is the file I want to download from S3 to local laptop. This is source. Destination I am giving download into my desktop. Download into my desktop, something like this in my local laptop. In my local laptop, I am using MacBook. So I am using MacBook. I am saying download to desktop like that. Otherwise, you give C drive or whatever. Otherwise, you just give like this. In the present directory, it will download in your local laptop. Since he has a read only, he is able to download. But will he able to upload any file from his local laptop to that S3? Let me take some file, very simple file, reverse, right? I am saying I want to upload to S3 bucket. The source is my local laptop. If you see, is the AWS is allowing Bhaskar to copy some file to S3 bucket? No, because of the permissions. Because of the permissions. Clear? What is happening here? How it is working? What is happening here? How it is working? Is everyone clear? Guys, using CLI also, you can create EC2, you can create VPC, you can create ELB, you can create EKS, but you need to execute lot of commands in a proper sequence again, in a proper sequence. So AWS CLI is not a declarative, it's not a declarative approach, it's a imperative, one after the other you need to execute lot of commands, right? So is AWS is ideal for creating and managing the infrastructure. This AWS CLI especially, is this AWS is CLI is ideal for creating, managing and upgrading the infrastructure resources? No, because you need to execute 1,000 different commands, one after the other, proper order you need to execute. It is not a declarative. But can I use for small tasks like copying the files to S3, downloading the files from S3, or getting some IP address of some load balancer, or getting IP address of some EC2 instance like that? Small operations. Can I use AWS CLI? Yes. But if I have to create an infrastructure as a code, what is recommended? I already told Terraform. Clear? What is AWS CLI? First of all, now if Bhaskar is using his laptop, it will work. Now let's consider, Balaji is using his access keys and secret key, it will work. Bhaskar don't have a permissions. Forget about this one. Let's say he has some Terraform script also. Bhaskar has developed some Terraform script. He has written some Terraform script. Even though he has his Terraform script, if he run Terraform script, do you think it will work? In his local laptop, he has installed Terraform also. If you run Terraform script, do you think it will be able to create a EC2? Let me show some simple Terraform script. Anyhow, from Monday, we are going to discuss in detail Terraform. So let me create some simple Terraform script. I'm going to create one folder. I'm going to create one folder. I'll develop Terraform script. Very simple Terraform script. I'm not doing something complex here. I'm opening that folder in a Visual Studio Code. So Terraform. I already have a Terraform installed in my local laptop. Terraform I have already installed in my local laptop. Terraform version, if you see, I already have some Terraform installed up to date. Now let me develop Terraform script. So let me create one file, something like this. So Terraform, I'm going to discuss all these things, right? If you have to use Terraform, anyhow, I need to discuss all these things. We will discuss later. So I will go with Terraform, right? AWS provider, because I want to manage resources using AWS, right? Using AWS, I need to manage. So let me try with AWS providers, AWS provider. So I'm going to go with provider AWS provider, because I want to manage it. Terraform infrastructure as a code using Terraform in the AWS. So I will define some block like this. In my Terraform script, I am saying provider Terraform block. I am saying AWS provider. This version of the provider I want to use. In which region? In which region you want to manage your infrastructure? I am saying AP South 1 like this. Now I will create a resource. Guys, leave about this. I will explain in detail. AWS instance. I am trying to create AWS instance. Demo Terraform, like demo server like this. Now I need to provide a AMI ID. I need to provide instance ID. I basically instance type like t2.micro. I want to provision. For now, I'm just using two attributes, remaining default attributes. So let me get some AMI ID. That AMI ID is region specific. Let me get AMI ID. Let me get AMI ID. Let me get AMI ID. Some AMI ID, whatever AMI. That AMI is a region specific. So let me go to AMI catalog. Let me go to this community AMIs or frequently used AMIs. Let me use this Red Hat AMI. Let me use this AMI ID. In my Terraform script, I am hard coding this AMI ID. So I am saying I need a AWS EC2 instance. I am giving a tags name demo server, or let's say app servers, like that. So this is my Terraform script. So in my local laptop, I have already installed Terraform. In my local laptop, I have already installed Terraform. So let me go to that folder. Let me go to that folder where I have a Terraform that code. So I have a code here. I have a code. This is my Terraform code. Just now I developed. Now let me execute Terraform init. I already configured AWS CLI. I mean to say I configured access keys and secret keys. Terraform init. I am initializing the Terraform. It is going to download required providers, that AWS provider downloading. But if I execute Terraform apply, do you think it will work? Is this a Bhaskar will be able to create this EC2 instance as per that code? No. Terraform plan, I am saying. So there are, there is a declarative approach. There is a desired state, current state, like that. There is a state file. Anyhow, I will explain all these things in Terraform. So one resource Terraform is planning to add, but let me execute Terraform apply. Terraform apply. It will throw error because Bhaskar doesn't have a permissions. Because the Bhaskar doesn't have a permissions. If you see, are we getting something like this? 1 second, there is a space here. 400 bad request. There is a space here in this AMI ID. There is a space here. Let me save this. Let me execute. Let me execute because there is a space. It is saying invalid, bad request, bad request. So let me execute. After fixing that, let me apply. If you see, is it returning 403? 403. You are not authorized to perform this operation because Bhaskar don't have access for EC2 full access. Bhaskar has EC2 read only access. So is everyone clear how IAM works? Whether you are doing GUI, whether you are using CLI or API or Terraform also, is that users need access to the resources to create or update or manage that one. But same thing if admin does, that is Balaji. I have a Balaji access keys and secret key also. I have a Balaji access key and secret key also. Let me reconfigure my AWS CLI, something like this again. AWS configure. I'm using Balaji access key now. I'm using Balaji secret key like this. Now same Terraform script as a Balaji I am executing. As a Balaji I am executing. Since Balaji has a admin permissions, like all the access, not only for EC2, all the access is there. Is Balaji is able to create that EC2 instance via Terraform because Balaji has a permissions? Yes. Now you can see demo server that is getting created. If we go to console also, if you go to console also, we can see. If you go to console also, he can see. Now, not only anyone has access to that AWS account, they can see. Is that server is getting created? Let me refresh here. Is that server is getting created? Initializing. Initializing. Name, small case I have given, that's why it is not shown here. Small name, n small I have given as a tag, that's why it is not showing here. But is that EC2 instance is created by the Terraform? Yes. Now let me update my Terraform script. Just I am going to update the tag. Let me keep this name n caps. Let me add some additional tags also, saying just managed IAC. Some additional tag, managed by, something like this, some additional tag. Now let me again do the Terraform plan. It will show the difference because current state is little different, and I modified the code that is desired state. So currently, earlier there was a tag like this. Now I am adding additional tags. Let me apply. Now yes, I want to apply. Now if I go and check here, let me refresh. Can I see that EC2 instance is tagged something like this name app server I have given, and additional tag also managed by ASC. Now can I destroy also as a Balaji? Terraform destroy, it will destroy whatever is going to be created. Yes, but anyhow Terraform I am going to start from Monday. But before you guys before you guys start with Terraform, you should know AWS concepts. What is AWS? What is EC2, EBS, EFS? What is IAM? If without knowing IAM, if you directly start working on Terraform, will you able to understand this permissions concept? What is happening in the background? No. So that's why I bring IAM concept today. Is everyone clear IAM, how it works? What is policy? What is users? What is groups? Now same thing. If I have to do with some server, let's say this server need to do something. Let's say I have one server, maybe I can manually also create a server. From this server I need access to the AWS services. What can I do here? Can I use role concept here with instead of access keys and secret key? Can I use role IAM role concept here? You guys already done like this, I think. Let me create some server. In this server I might be running Terraform script, or in this server I am running some Java code which requires access to the S3. In this server I might be running some AWS CLI. In this server I am running some application which is internally talking to the S3 service. Do I need to grant access to that server to access to the AWS resources? Yes. So how can I do that? I can create some role. Let me go to IAM again as an admin. As an admin, I can go to IAM. I can create a role. I can create a role. I can create a role. Some whatever role with whatever policies. Let's say I am creating a role and I want to use this or I want to attach this role with EC2. I am selecting use case as EC2 and I will attach some policies. Only whatever policies which is required, only recommendation is least privileges, guys. Don't give unnecessarily admin access. Don't give unnecessarily admin access. Whatever access which is really required, that access only you give. Don't give full access or admin access like that. So if required, you can give only EC2 full access, EC2 read only access like that. Otherwise, administrator access like this. Otherwise, admin access like this. So I'm creating one role with this policy. I'm creating one role with this policy, admin policy. I'm saying admin role. So if I attach this role to some AWS service like EC2, is that EC2 also will have a full access to all the AWS resources? If I'm running some Terraform script or AWS CLI or some Java code or .NET code, Python code, which is internally talking to the AWS resources, will it able to talk to that AWS resources? If I attach this role to that server, that EC2, whatever I created, yes. So let me show that. Let me SSH to this temporary server for now. Let me SSH to this server, whatever I created. Let me SSH. Let me connect to that server. Let me SSH. I am SSHing to that server. I am SSHing to that server. So I am SSHing to that server. I don't have a AWS CLI. If I have to run any AWS CLI command, I need a AWS CLI. Suppose if I want to run any AWS CLI command, I need a AWS CLI. You can install AWS CLI. You can install AWS CLI if required. I already told how to install in Linux also. How to install in Linux also, I have already told. Install AWS CLI. Suppose you want to run Terraform script, you need to install Terraform. Suppose you want to run Terraform script, you can install Terraform. Suppose you want to run AWS CLI commands, you install AWS CLI. This is for Linux. This is for Linux. Let me download this zip file. Let me unzip this zip file in the Linux system only. Unzip is not there. Let me install. Install this unzip software. I am going to install first. Now let me extract after installing unzip. Let me install. I have installed AWS CLI, but I have not configured this server with required permissions, right? If you see AWS CLI is installed, but if I execute any AWS commands like AWS S3 LS, like this, you are getting AWS configure option, but you no need to configure here with access keys and secret key. So can we attach that IAM role, whatever policies you need to attach for this one? You can create a IAM role as an admin, and you can attach that IAM role to this server. So I created IAM role, and I am attaching that IAM role, that whatever IAM role. I am attaching this admin role where I have attached administrative policy. Now is this guy, I mean to say, from this system also can I do anything, everything now after attaching that IAM role to this server? Do you see, is it working? If required, can I delete this buckets also? AWS S3 RB remove bucket, that bucket name like this. So first you need to empty the bucket because bucket is not empty. So how to empty the bucket, right? AWS S3, let me see the help command. AWS S3 help command. You don't need to remember all these commands, okay? You can, there is a documentation, official documentation also. There is something called AWS S3 RM. AWS S3 RM remove files like this. Now I have removed some files. Let me see AWS S3 LS. What I think I will not have anything because I have removed everything. I don't have anything. Okay, I have still some files. Let me see if this work. So do I have anything as of now? Okay, still we have something. Okay, let me see if I can remove the bucket. Okay, you need to delete the folder. AWS S3 RM. Let me give. So now let's see if I have anything as of now. Okay. So you can remove, you need to first remove the files, later you can delete. But now it has a permissions. It has a permissions to create bucket, delete bucket because of the admin. So is everyone clear? What is role, what is policies, what is group, what is users? In detail, I have discussed IAM, guys, because this is very, very important for Terraform to understand. Because you run Terraform script, Terraform script will fail saying some permission in it, but you may think it is a problem with the Terraform. It's not problem with the Terraform, it's problem with access. It's problem with permissions. Clear? IAM. Today I have extended 30 minutes more, almost 2 hours I took because this is very, very important concept. Try to practice whatever has been discussed. I'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll take CloudWatch. I will explain some information about CloudWatch. From Monday, I will start Terraform. Tomorrow we'll discuss CloudWatch case. Thank you. That's it for today. I'll continue tomorrow with CloudWatch. Thank you, guys.